Welcome back to Top Story. I'm here in the studio with Al Errington. Al, how's it going today?
It's going very well, actually. It's raining, but it's been a good day.
Good, glad to hear it. So, Al, for those of you who don't know, owns Errington's Wilderness. Is it island or resort?
Island resort.
Island resort, it's both. And I worked for Al, with Al, at the Miss Abbey Cree. We worked on the train initiative, and that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah.
So this is a topic we're both pretty well versed in. So this is like old stomping grounds for us to sit and talk about this. So, okay, your resort is on Lake Wabatongushi.
Yes, that's about 40 minutes by air, or 20 minutes by air north of Hawk Junction, Ontario, just outside of Wawa.
And you used to bring in a lot of business through the Algoma passenger train.
Yes, most of our business over the last over 40 years has been, well, actually longer than that, has been through the passenger train. The passenger train used to be a great service, actually, and we were able to bring in lots of guests. They paid lots of taxes. They employed a significant staff. And then when it's gone, actually, it made things a lot more difficult, and definitely not as strong a tourism industry in our area.
So that business has been in your family
Since 1975.
Wow.
And the actual business dates back to the mid-1950s.
Wow. And always use the train.
Always use the train, yes.
So what have the impacts been then? Because, you know, we hear a lot about the train and we hear statistics and we hear numbers, but I think a lot of the time seeing the face behind someone that's impacted is a little bit more powerful than just, you know, hearing the numbers. Now, have you had, like, when this happened, this was in 2014, the train stopped running?
Basically, yes.
Did you have to lay people off? Like, did it affect business to that extent?
Yeah, oh yes. There's no doubt, actually, because our, as the train deteriorated, even actually we weren't as optimal. But as soon as the train stopped, our employment decreased by about 20%.
Wow.
Our tax generation decreased by about 40%. And a lot of people think tourism is a really lucrative business. They think I'm rich. But tourism is a very high expense industry.
Right.
So most of the income I bring in, some goes to pay wages for myself, of course, myself and my wife. However, most of it just goes to other expenses. Yes, food. We've got a staff of about 12 people to feed. We've got guests to feed. We have boats and motors and lumber and all those things. So the actual profit in tourism is actually very low because so much goes back into the local economy.
Right. Now, what? If I can talk. Can you give a comparison of what business was like with the train versus now? Because things are still good, right?
Yes, actually, I mean, tourism is doing fairly well, pretty well overall. On the whole, as an industry, that's because of the economy is doing well in the United States. So that's good. We are not receiving as much in the Algoma region because of the loss of the train.
Right.
It's also impacted the type of tourists I can bring. My wife and I were really targeting a lot of seniors, people with mobility issues, stuff like that, because the train is
perfect for them.
It's the most accessible means of transportation.
Right.
And a lot of those just dropped right off after we lost the train, including actually one of the ones that was really special to me. We had one of our guests was one of the oldest World War II vets.
Wow.
He just passed away actually about a few months ago, but he wasn't able to make it up the last few years.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, he made it up until he was 94 years old.
Wow, on the train.
On the train.
So now, if people want to get to your lodge, they have to fly in?
Yes, they fly in, and Hawk Air is fantastic.
Right.
But there are some accessibility issues with the float plane.
Of course.
Some people physically can't get into and out of an airplane. Some people psychologically can't get in.
They don't like flying, and those are small planes too.
They're fairly small planes. I would say, I mean, I love flying in float planes. They're closer to the ground. You can see a lot more. They're just, and I mean, you could talk to the pilot and stuff
Yeah.
like that, which you can't in the bigger planes and stuff.
Right.
You definitely can't talk to the pilot.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
it
it's
can't be
been
cheap
great.
to fly.
They are more expensive, but that's actually less of an issue than
Accessibility piece.
accessibility piece is actually a very, very big issue. The other thing actually the train was very conducive to was the ecotourism. The float planes are great for the adventurers. They overall like unless they have phobias or physical issues.
Right.
But the train was very, very conducive because it's such an ecologically responsible means of transportation. It's very conducive to attracting that ecotourism.
Which is becoming more prominent now than ever.
It's a huge, huge industry. The seniors, especially, are really an ecotourism market, a huge ecotourism market. But in general, actually, the well-to-do, in a lot of the ways, some of the most lucrative clientele are
Very conscious of that.
very conscious of that and tend to be seniors as well.
So, okay, that kind of brings me to this question for you, because now we're kind of talking about missed opportunities, right? So, tourism has developed a lot as an industry since the train stopped running, I would say as well. Like,
Yeah.
it's an industry that's ever changing and ever growing. What are some of, as a business owner, what are some of the opportunities that you've kind of thought of or seen done in other places that you've looked at and said, I can't do that now because we don't have the train?
Well-
or perhaps that you've heard from other lodge owners?
Well, actually, the year that the train was canceled, actually, we were working because the group of 7
Right.
artists have become
It's a huge pull.
It's a huge pull, and we're working on some. I think would have been some fantastic group of 7 products, and I had to abandon them as soon as the train was gone because the train itself was where the group of 7 actually formed, was actually on the Algoma passenger train.
In a
And-
boxcar.
In a boxcar, yes, all up and down the line, and that really lent itself to some very good tourism products in
Right.
regard to that. That I could have actually I would have been hiring even more people, including experts on
Actual
art,
guides.
actual
Yeah.
guiding, and artists to help people who want to say paint some of the group of 7 sites. One of the part of the package was to take the train up with a guide who is knowledgeable about it and photograph some of the group of 7 sites, and then come up to my resort for 3 to 4 days and actually be mentored in painting some
What
of
a
those
getaway
same.
that would be.
Yeah, it would be fantastic.
And
but
there are group of 7 sites that are only accessible by rail.
almost all of the really fundamental ones from the group of 7, and a lot of formational ones, you can't get to except by train.
Now, what about this aspect of Indigenous tourism? Because now we're looking at kind of going through, and this is where a lot of, I think, what the Mississippi Cree is trying to do comes in too, is it's passing through a lot of traditional territory to the Cree, but also to the Anishinaabe. We have the pictographs that are kind of in that area as well. Can you speak to any of that, or?
Well, there's a lot of interest in that development, but the fundamental problem actually with tourism in general is transportation,
Right.
and getting them to the two areas where, if the First Nations are going to develop their own types of tourism and stuff like that, in wilderness areas around education about their culture, education about some of their traditional skills and stuff like that, they have to get the people to it.
Right.
And also, again, the most lucrative clientele that are going to be attracted to that are seniors and more well-to-do clientele. People who, in general, are not going to try to get into it by other means.
Right.
It's got to be a facilitated process. Transportation
Absolutely.
is huge to tourism.
No, for sure. And so I have one last kind of question for you to conclude where we're going with this conversation. Now, when we talk about the missed opportunities, the economic impact, I heard that a lodge had to close recently. I don't know which it was. CAPT sent out a release. But why? No, that's not the right way to word it. Where are the government's priorities in transportation? Obviously, it's not with rail in terms of funding.
I don't know. It's obviously not to move people or products because they would be doing a lot bigger job. I mean, the whole Northern Growth Plan, I keep having the same question, and that is there's not a fundamental SWOT analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of each different type of transportation. Because different types of transportation, whether it's road, rail, air, or marine, have different strengths and weaknesses. And that was never done for the Northern Growth Plan. They just went forward with a plan, which I don't know what the actual objective of the plan was, other than take a decade or a decade and a half to put it together.
Yeah, it's a lot. It kind of comes back to that idea of the bureaucratic process and the amount of time spent report writing. It's something that we hear a lot in government agencies now. But money is being funneled into highways. Yes,
and I don't think people realize just how heavily subsidized our highways are. Actually, that people assume because they pay a gas tax when they fill up their tank that that's actually paying for the highways, where it probably, if it did, it probably has been decades since it did. I have no idea how heavily subsidized the highways are. CAA came up with a figure of approximately 20%, but it really didn't figure on, first of all, CAA is very pro-road, and they could only come up with a 20% subsidy. But also, people do say the fact that most of the driving is done on municipal roads, not on highways.
Right.
So the municipal roads, the use of municipal roads is actually subsidizing the highway infrastructure. And this whole culture in government around, well, yes, we are going to subsidize the roads, but every other means of transportation has to take care of itself.
Right.
So that rail, air, marine are all at a competitive disadvantage to roads.
Yeah, off the hop.
Yeah, right off the hop because because the roads are extremely heavily subsidized, and because the other means of transportation are not supported, the government needs to put even more money into roads
because people are more reliant on it.
Yeah, because we have to do more.
Catch-22.
We have to do more rebuilding of roads because of the amount of heavy traffic on it from trucks. And we have to build roads bigger because we don't have other alternative transportation means.
Quite the dilemma. Now, thank you so much for coming in and talking about this. I know you know that I'm a huge supporter of renewed rail service up here in the north, and I wish you all the best in this kind of endeavor to lobby the government to take some action.
Well, hopefully we can go maybe backwards in time and not only have trains north, but trains south as well, connecting us to. It would be great to have trains going right down to Toronto.
And have a more diverse transportation system, absolutely.
And accessible.
Yes. Thank you so much, Al, for coming in. That's it for Top Story today. Stay tuned for more news coming up after this.